This is the first episode of Solutions with Santos, and where we bring discussions about people's identity and how they live their lives and how they identify for where they're at in their lives. And my first guest is Cody, who I went to school with, who I've known since childhood, probably known longer than anybody else in the world, that I still associate with. And I feel like it's very appropriate that this is happening because it is the beginning, and he was a part of my life in the beginning of my life. And we played football together, went to high school together, went to church together. And this man, he's done tremendous things about being a leader in his community. He's also played some semi-pro stuff. So he has been established and what people would say is successful in life, I would put it, right? No matter what he came through, no matter what the world has thrown at him, he has made it in life. He has been successful. He has been important in people's lives, been an influence in people's lives. And so I personally feel like it's an honor, because I grew up with him, to have him on the show and be the first person to be on my show. And I haven't told him this really person to person, but he actually helped me be strong in a lot of ways when I was growing up. And I really appreciate that, because he always pushed me to be to stand on my square more than I was at that age, where I was a little more unsure of myself, like people are when they're when they're growing up. But he was always there to be like, no, bro, you got the power, you got the strength. This is all about you. You can do this. And so with no further ado, Cody, can you go ahead and share a little bit about yourself?
Hey. So, hey, brother. Thanks for the intro. Maybe. But no, for real. My name's Cody, and Soul and I we go back since, shoot, a long time. And he's a brother that I've been thinking about as the years go on. Kind of, you know how it is. Like, you get that nostalgic feeling of old friends, and you just like, you plug in. You want to know
Yeah,
what they're doing, how they're doing, um, because as we go about life, we just don't know, I guess, how much longer we have. Anything could happen. So I think as we get older, right, we just, I don't know how it is for everybody else, but for me, I just like to just plug in and just, touch base with a lot of people from the roots,
yeah,
and just see how everybody's doing and how we're feeling, because we all go different paths, like you mentioned, man.
yeah,
Um, we all do different things, and
yeah,
we encounter so much. If you think about it, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and all our four directions. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
w- we have so much that we encountered, right? Those are life lessons. Shoot, man, we could write little books about that, right? Little short stories,
yeah, yeah,
Um, and everybody has those. So I think it's just kind of the human thing, is just reach out and just say, hey, what's good? What's up? What's good? And how you
yeah,
feeling? Because that's the one thing I've known, is that a lot of us don't ask how each other are doing. And that right there is just that opening of, like, no matter what crossroads that you have encountered. And I get it. I've been slighted a few times, right?
yeah, yeah,
So when somebody says, will ask me that, I just kind of look at them like sus, I'm
yeah.
like, what? Like they just threw me
What
like
do
a
you
light
want?
slap, like, what?
Yeah.
Hey.
Especially
Um,
being men, it's like we're not necessarily as privy to being vulnerable, and we're trying to change that, right? But we
oh
got to
man,
be.
we're trying to change. Yeah, we try to change all that, man. And I think the thing is, like, with you and kids, I have kids.
Hmm.
They change our perspective, right? Like,
Yeah,
they make us better
yeah,
when we get that time to reflect at the end of the day, right? When we get to
yeah,
sit back and just be like, I don't know how it is for everybody else, like I said, but I'm just speaking from my, my personal triumphs and failures. My kids, when they were young, they made me feel that. They
Yeah.
made me feel like young. They made me feel a little bit old. They
Yeah.
they tested me, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was, how could I be better?
Yeah.
Meaning, in my approach, how can I love them better? How can I, give them those lessons,
Yeah.
because they're seeking that, man. So, like I said, man, that's just and all of that encompasses kind of who we are, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
you're
They
you're a
really
dad, I'm a
reflect.
dad,
Yeah. They
you
really
know.
reflect who we are because the way that we respond and the way that we act, you can see them be like, mirror kind of like the way we are towards them, and it's something that it's a whole different journey because as you see them move around, you kind of see yourself in them and you're like, oh wow, that's what it was. And I even remember things from my childhood and I was like, oh my God, I remember being curious like that, or I remember being hyper like that, or running around like that, and then the way I act, sometimes I'm like, oh man, that's like my mom or or my dad, and you got to reassess whether or not that's the way you want to be towards your child. Or maybe your parents had a reason why they were being like that. So then you understand, then you're like, oh, okay, I see why my parents said this. Or why they acted like this in this moment. And then you got to decide whether or not it's appropriate for you and your family to continue on. It's very interesting, intriguing, right?
See, like you mentioned about being a leader, I never had aspirations of being a leader, right? And
Yeah.
and that was something that you saw in our younger years. I didn't
Yeah.
see it like that. I didn't see it in me,
Yeah.
right? I just was
Yeah.
I was out there, like like thinking about how you and I came up. I remember, like I said, we've talked about it many times. We went to a private school where
Yeah.
it was majority like non-colored people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
there, we were like the only two cats,
Yeah.
that were
Yeah.
there of color, and it was just
Yeah.
like, I was like, damn, man,
Yeah.
because it was in Fargo, North
Yeah.
Dakota, and
Fargo, North
Fargo's
Dakota. Yeah.
it was populated, man. There you saw people of color, and
In
I
the
remember
80s,
thinking
90s,
it was.
90s, 80s, 90s, like,
I was like, damn, man, how are we the two dudes like
yeah.
of any color here?
Yeah.
And I grew up with that sense of racial discrimination, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's what made me into being a leader. I have no idea, but um, I mean, shoot, I haven't dissected it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but what I was trying to do with you back in the day was have you plug in, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way I'm the only, like I've encountered this racial shit. I mean, I
Yeah.
was like, I would ask you questions, and I
Yeah.
remember you were just kind of like, just hey man, I'm just trying to keep forward, and I was like,
Yeah.
I was trying to be more real, of like, hey, they
Yeah.
see us different, like
Yeah.
even in football was like, it's already a masculine sport, so you
Yeah.
already got to show your grit. And I
Yeah.
I remember cats looking at you like, little skinny dude, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, you got it, man. You got strength. I was trying to like empower you because I was
Yeah.
seeing them beat on you,
Yeah.
and for me, I loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
and and I don't know if I ever told you this, but um, see, in my younger years, I was abused by my stepdad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I bottled that in. So before I went to Oak Grove,
Yeah.
uh, one of my coaches there in Fargo said, "Hey, Cody, you're a really good athlete.
Yeah.
You're a phenomenal football player. Here's the deal: it's legal for you to just beat the hell out of somebody, like tackle them with fury,
Yeah.
inflict pain. And when that happened, like he turned on a switch that I was like, for real.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know what, whatever has happened to you in the past,
Yeah.
turn that switch on. and just put it on this field. He said, and just,
Yeah.
and so I guess that was like my indoctrination into like therapy, sports therapy in a way.
Yeah.
Like, how
Sports
crazy is
therapy.
that?
Yeah.
Where I was just, I was just knocking the hell out of, of cats back in the day, and I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't care what it did to my body, but
Yeah.
what I did was I just loved that impact. And as
Yeah. You were
crazy as
able
that sounds, you
you were
know,
able to use it as a release, huh? From all that built up stuff that
yeah, it
was going
was.
on, right? Yeah.
So
You
like
know
with
this.
you and me,
Yeah.
like I said, I would see cats, like picking on you, and I was like, nah, man, so it was my turn to do like a block and drill or whatever it was. I was just like, man, I'm gonna knock this fool out, I'm gonna hit him hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but also it was just like trying to tell you, like, hey, we got this, like build up, because
Yeah.
you don't see that too much. So that's why, like I said, you talking about being a leader and a leader in my community. I didn't aspire to that. I guess it's just something that was natural in me, and I didn't really see that until, a little bit later, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you get the accolades, shit. I was
Yeah.
captain, so many times for different teams. It was just kind of like, coaches would be like, oh, he's our leader. He's our spirit behind this, man. Get behind Cody. He'll take you there. And I was just like, yeah, okay, but
Yeah.
it was like I always felt like there was something other than sports that was gonna propel me in life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it wasn't just that. I didn't want people to be like, hey, I only know Cody from sports.
Yeah. 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 You wanted to be more than
I
that.
I had to, I had to change the game up, man.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe explore that part where we go into like maybe if you could give a little bit of background on your cultural heritage, maybe some family background. You know what I mean? Having a stepfather, maybe um your birth father, those dynamics that help create your identity and who you are. Maybe you could share a little bit about that background for people so they get a foundation of where Cody came from.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm an enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe of South Dakota. Um, so obviously, culture is a big part, has always been a big part of my upbringing, right?
Yeah.
Um, my family dynamics, my mother, she she has a couple of PhDs,
Dang. Yeah.
very, very, very smart woman.
Hmm.
I think when we talk about being a leader, like she's the one that really had me plug into different things. She would
Yeah.
teach me about things in society. Like, she would look at, the norms and the discomforts, and then just kind of have me take a look at those. And you know it was different because as a boy growing up, it was like, I'm sure I know for a hell, man, I was tough. I was tough on her,
Yeah.
but she threw back, and there was so much that she taught me. I remember she told me about getting my education, right?
Yeah.
And that would propel me further uh in life than sports. And boy, I was just kind of like, ah, man, I was just like, whoa, I was like, no, hey, that's a challenge, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't like that challenge because, to be honest with you, dude, I grew up with a learning disability. I had no damn idea that I had a learning disability, right?
Yeah.
So for me, um, I could, like, when I would read something, right? I didn't comprehend what the hell I was saying. I was just trying to get through the damn reading.
Yeah.
And then it was like, what did you read? I don't know. Didn't you
Yeah.
didn't you take any of that in? I was like, no, man, I'm just trying to get this done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that was intimidating for me because I don't know where that came from, dude, but you know, it just sometimes school just freaked me the hell out, man, because I just didn't. I remember, like, because we moved around a lot, right, when I was a kid. So I
Yeah.
would get yelled at, and majority of the time when we lived off the reservation, I was in schools that were predominantly white.
Yep. Yeah.
So I was the only kid of color that probably those kids have probably ever seen
Ever see? Yeah.
in their upbringing, you
Yeah.
know? So you already have pressures. And when I couldn't understand some shit,
Yeah.
that was that was defeating. But then also the
Yeah.
defeat of being viewed as a dumb Indian,
Yeah.
I was like, damn, man. And then being yelled at by teachers and stuff, and I just didn't. It quickly disconnected me from education.
Hey, what's going on? We're going to get back to the interview right after this. If you like what you're hearing and you like the interview that's going on and you want to learn more about us, go ahead and go to thismodernmessage.com where you can get access to courses, merchandise, and live events that we'll be at. Thismodernmessage.com. We'll see you there. Yeah,
You know,
100%. I understand
and
that. Yeah.
I tried to to tell my mom about that. My stepdad, he you know he would push academics like the like it was a brand. You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got to do this. You have to. And I'm just like, I don't really. I felt like I didn't have to, and
Yeah.
so that dynamic with my stepdad was different because we just didn't mesh,
Yeah, not
you
at all.
know,
And then on
majority
top of
of my
that, he was your
life.
stepdad, on top of that,
Yeah, yeah. And then my biological dad, he just didn't want to do he didn't want nothing to do with my mom and I.
Yeah.
I found it out later when my mother told me. She said, when I was a baby, he just didn't want to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
He was already married to another woman while
Yeah.
married to my mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
But in two different states. And of course, back then they just not like nowadays where you get plugged into a system. They can find your name from if you did something in Virginia, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
whatever, it's just like, but back then they just didn't have that. And my
yeah. It was
mother didn't even
paperwork.
know that he was married to
Yeah,
another woman, in a different state. So
that's wild.
and so when I was a teenager, right? And when I found that out about the same time, like, you and I linked up, right? When you and I
Yeah,
connected.
yeah,
And that was a lot for me to process too, because I remember thinking, I was like, damn, man, my biological dad didn't want nothing to do with me.
yeah.
And I was like, so, and I'm sitting there like trying to process that, like, what the hell? And then at that time, like, and I told you that, man, long before we met, hip hop was
Coming
like,
in.
it was my thing though. It was
Yeah,
my thing.
yeah,
I liked it. I
yeah,
was into the beats before, like when I introduced you to Public Enemy and all them
yeah,
cats, right?
yeah,
But see, the thing was, I was trying to process and I was listening to lyrics about. I was like, damn, man, am I a bastard, child? And I
yeah,
was just like, oh, okay. So I started getting raw, and I was like, in my
yeah.
mind,
No, I
I was like, well,
understand. Yeah,
screw this dude.
yeah,
And then when I became like after Oak Grove, when we moved to Wapton, and I became a really good runner. And I remember my stepdad reached out to my coach and said, "Hey, that's my boy." And of course, my coach at the time, she was just like, "What?" And then she found out just through all that, through my biological dad, was that, oh, okay, so this guy that he calls dad now is his stepdad, like, because
yeah,
you see what I'm saying? I wasn't trying to get people in my biz,
yeah, yeah.
just like you have to earn my trust in order to to know me personally, right, Cody?
That
Um,
vulnerability, right? You were
yeah,
very cautious about how vulnerable you were around people because you had to protect yourself.
yeah. And I was just like, and when that came out, I was pissed because I was
Yeah,
like, oh, okay, because now I'm making headlines, and this cat comes out of nowhere and wants to lay claim on that
yeah,
talent, like that's his talent too. And I was just like, I was harsh on him, man. I was just like, fuck you, for
yeah,
real. Um, and so, like I said, just grew up different, from a lot of people because I didn't have like that, like what most people, I guess, what when we I guess when we look back at the cats that we went to school with
Yeah.
who have their parents and then, you know, obviously their home, hell, they probably still have that home that they grew up in. Shit, I grew up in multiple different areas, so there was never a place to call home, you
Yeah.
know? So I can't go back and say, "Hey, that house right there, my family's had for 30 plus
30
years and
years. Yeah.
that was my old room right there." I don't have
Yeah.
nothing like that, man.
Exactly.
I used to think that used to like eat me up when I was like in my 20s, right? In my early 20s, because I was like, man, I would really want that because
Yeah.
stability.
Yeah.
it- I wanted stability so goddamn bad, man, that it was like in me,
Yeah.
and it was hard to express that, man, you know, for real, because it was like, who do you
Stability and
trust?
belonging, right? You wanted to belong.
Yeah. Like I belong to my people and I belong to my, you know, my tribe, right? My
Yeah.
way of life that way, my cultural way of life. But you know, when you just want to say, "Hey, man, I just want to not do shit for days, where I just want to be home," I didn't even have that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and that was tough, man. That was real tough.
Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah, I understand that. It's because sometimes we need a place to go and everybody knows your name and you know what I mean on a more intimate level. And when you bounce around, a lot of it's surface level because there's no deep roots that were created. Because you know, it's just all sprouts in the grass. They, you know, just moments of time and then you move on, and moments of time and then you move on. You know, so that had to be
Yeah,
pretty hard. What do you
yeah.
think? How did the impact of your cultural background how did that influence your worldview?
You know, so my grandfather, when we would go back to the res and you know, like holidays or something, and spend time, he taught me a lot about like history, right? Our cultural history.
Yeah.
Um, and it was real cool because he would, I mean, he'd love me regardless, right,
Yeah.
of what I was doing. And but it was nice because when he taught the cultural aspects, he was always it was a teaching lesson, but it wasn't like pass or fail.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, you have this, you know, this is your our ancestors and our people endured this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was like a challenge too, right? You know, like, what are you going to do? You
Yeah.
know, how are you going to make a name for yourself or for this? Like, he'd always say next generation, right? Your
Yeah.
generation. And I was like, damn, man. I remember like, you know, just being a kid and thinking like, damn, man, well, he's real deep, you know? I'm like, what? And sometimes I wouldn't have an answer. I'd just be thinking about it. You know, just kind of like, damn, okay.
Yeah.
My mother would do the same, you know, like she would talk about those challenges as well to be better, you know, to look beyond. And so culturally it was like, all right, I know you know, where I belong, how I'm
Mhm.
connected,
Yeah.
and now it's me to ask those questions of how and why, you know. So okay, here we go, you know. It's some, I guess in some other ways, because I've had friends, you know, like on the reservation that were expected to know it and then pushed to know beyond, you
Yeah.
know, and they didn't like that. And for me, I I remember thinking, I was like, all right, just don't go in with expectations. You know, if you don't know something, then you don't know something. It's okay to ask.
Yeah.
You know, that was the one time I remember thinking it's okay to ask about something you don't know. Like in
Yeah.
school, hell, I wouldn't know. I'd be like, hey, you know, my hand would go up and be like, I don't
Yeah.
know this. And it was all like, we've been going over this on chalkboard. And I'm like, okay, but I just don't know it, man. You know, like,
No, I get it. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why, like I said, it was cool to just like, hey, I don't know this, so can you teach me, right?
Yeah.
And like culturally, and I was like, all right, cool. Um,
And there's no judgment culturally. There's no judgment that you didn't know. But it's
no,
almost like in this let's call it what it is, this colonized system of schooling, they because you weren't able to conform to the way that they taught things, you know what I mean? And really people know by now, all they do is they're teaching you so that you become a certain type of worker that they want to be able to use it within their system. And I, like me too, I'm not built that way either. Like and you're not built that way either. So then we had issues in school learning in that manner when everybody learns differently, you know. But
Yeah.
but it's interesting there's a couple things interesting about what you're talking about when you say you weren't you didn't really think of yourself as a leader, you know, but it looks like to me from the outside looking in is you had a lot of people around you that saw that in you, and they would, you know, they say, so what do you, like your mom and your grandpa, so what is it that you're going to do for your people, your culture, your, you know, for society? What are you going to do moving forward, even as a little kid? So then it's ingrained in your brain, and that became part of like your identity, even on a subconscious level, even if you didn't think about it consciously. You know, like a lot of these things that are going on with you, it's very interesting how they are compounded to make you to the choices that you started making later in life, you know, as far as being a leader, even without knowing that that's what you were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And that's okay. That, you know, like I said, just because it wasn't beat down on me time and time
No.
again. It
Yeah.
was just like, all right, you know, we're just gonna give you a little piece of jerky here and nibble
Yeah.
on that, and
Yeah.
then, you know, give you another one down the road or something. You know, it was like, and you not knowing. It's just like, all right, you know, just going about life. But you know, and I think like one thing I'm always adamant about, like as men, we don't talk about our mental health, right?
Yeah. Not at all.
We don't we don't share that because for some reason we just you know we just lock up. We just like, you know, we I think it's probably the social pressures that we feel is we got to be so manly, right? We got to be so tough. We got to be built. So we got to, you know, got to have this persona. And for us to admit that we have our downs,
Yeah.
like that becomes like we think we are less than that masculine figure.
Yeah.
And I grew up like that. I'm straight up. I admit there were times I felt that, but when I speak of that, like our mental health, that it's okay to express how we feel, even if we are sad or we feel down or we just like we just need our time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, um,
We weren't
and
really taught
that's
that, you know, we weren't really taught to be that way.
so our mental health as men. You know, it's not shared, it's not talked about as in depth, or and I guess mainly because some of us guys really don't like, you know, like we don't get into it, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't let that chapter of that book get opened, you know, unless we
Yeah.
open it. And I understand that. I understand that we have like our own, like we are our own gatekeepers of that. But it's okay to like let your guard down and just be like and be vulnerable. That's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Because we need to express that. We need to share that with our partners and our kids that, you know, that we're human, but you know, we'll like in our cult, like in my culture, in our Lakota way, we call it a Ikjewi Chasha, and an Ikjewi Chasha is a common man, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And what that means is that I'll be good one day and I'll be bad the next. I'll be I'll
Yeah.
be I'll be in triumph mode and I'll be in failure mode the next.
Hey, what's going on? We're going to get back to the interview right after this. As we build in our business, there's one thing that we found that everybody needs, and that is capital. And in order to get capital, we have to understand our own financial literacy. So Maeve and I have joined this group in this company that will help you understand your financial literacy, be able to give you some different ways where you could gain capital. And if you're interested in that, and whether it's for business or for personal, you're trying to build your life and you need finances to do so, be sure to hit me up at 612-750-3948 and text finances. 612-750-3948 and text finances.
You know, because that's life. We're common people. We're going to make mistakes, and we're not going to make mistakes. But you hear that from all different, societies, right? Different holistic measures, different, people call it the yin and the yang and stuff like that. But in other cultures of people will share the same thing. They just have different, wordings for it, or um, abbreviations, whatever it may be. But I know that just from I'm not any other culture except Lakota. So that's what I know, right? That's why for me I always grew up with that. When my grandfather taught me that, he said you're an Ikjewi Chasha.
Yeah.
And I was a kid and I was like, what? He's like, you're a common boy, right? You're gonna do good things, you're gonna do bad things. And I was like, damn. And he always like emphasized that, as I got older, you're an Ikjewi Chasha, you're a common person. And so it was like, yeah. Um, and so that is always that I hang on to, because it's just, you know, regardless of what your situation is, when we have time to reflect on a moment, like for me, that's how I got along, or that's how I got by. Was I was like, okay, I'm a common person. Okay. And it also kind of humbles you too, because when people put you up on a pedestal at times, right? Uh, and then you get to just be like, well, hey, I'm just regular, like just like you and me.
Yeah.
Because you get some cats out there that just take it to the next level of just notoriety and think it's fame and all this stuff, and and for me, I didn't care for that. So it was just like, no, I'm just common. I'm just like,
Yeah.
just like you and me. Like you may think different of me because of some super strength, or whatever it may be, but no, you just caught me on a good moment, and
Yeah.
that
I think
moment's
that's what
past.
kind of I think that's what makes why you make a good leader, because you don't that's how you're able to empower people, because you just relate to them, right? And you keep it humble, and that's what like gurus do. They have people, they follow them, they teach them their thing, but then they always do something to make sure that um they'll like pass gas or something in front of all their students, so that they know, hey, I'm just a human being just like you, making it through this world just like you. And I think that's what's the profound aspect of what makes them so good at what they do. And the same with the way you are, you're able to be like, hey man, I'm just human just like you. And I just wanted to touch on something that you said. So culturally, you were taught, like, you're a common man, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, and you're going to do good, and that's okay. Now when you were going through school, and you're going through school in this in this predominantly 90 some percent Caucasian, right, culture, and do you feel like that they communicated the same to you? Did that
No,
mirror culturally?
n- no, not at all, man. Like it was, I was the negative impacts were first, and that's what all people held on to, right?
uh,
Was, oh, he's a dumb Indian.
yeah.
Um, oh, he's a dirty Indian. Oh, he's a poor Indian.
Yeah.
Like all these ties. I didn't care. Like that was demeaning. Yes, it was, but it didn't define me, right?
Hmm.
And I would take all that in. I would, at first I'd be like, damn, man, why they got to come at me like that? I'm just
Yeah.
like, I would look at myself and be like, really? That's how you see me? I
Yeah.
was different. I thought differently. I wasn't that poor Indian, I wasn't that dirty Indian. I wasn't. And then with that type of pressure, uh, it, my outlet was the only thing I was like, I looked at that I knew I could escape out of that reality was through sports.
Yeah.
That's why I became so good at just being a natural athlete, was because it was my escape. You know,
Yeah.
you find out now that kids, when they grow up like that, they're different forms of escape. They get into books, they go into like a different world, you know,
Yeah.
mentally, because they get to project themselves somewhere else other than the crap that they're currently in.
Yeah.
For
That's very
me,
good.
I got to physically get out. That frustration, I got to take it out. I got to run harder. I got to hit harder.
Yeah.
Um, I use it as a way of like strength
Yeah.
to say, don't mess with me, right? Like stay
Yeah.
back. Like that was my, without getting like physical, without like wanting to do an altercation. Um, and so that growing up in that, in those, not, I wouldn't say norms, but growing up in that way was really, it hurt. It hurt to not be seen as equal. Um,
Yeah.
it like it damaged me at times, you know what I'm saying? Like it like damn, man, maybe there is something wrong with me, you know? I
Yeah.
would like let that seep into my head, and I would share that with like my grandfather, and he would tell me, don't ever give in to that, because that's, you know, that's he would say white people, because that's, he said, you know, that's the only way I know how to describe them. He's like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
racist. He said they're just white people. But he said
Yeah.
white people have it in them that they have to see people of color as non-important. You know, they gotta make them feel inferior, you know,
Yeah.
to their self-being. And I would think about that, and I'd be like, all right, so they have, it's just something on them that they're not comfortable with, but they're throwing it on me. They're projecting it on me. Now, what
Yeah.
young kid is processing that in their head like that, right? I
Yeah.
was, but not
Yeah.
many. So I would be like, oh, they're just, you know, like for me, I felt like pity for them, even though I
Yeah.
shouldn't. And I was like, hmm. I was like, well, I pity them. And then, you know, and then I would think in my morbid mind of like Mr. T, you know, I pity the fool,
I
you
pity the
know.
fool. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd be like, I pity them because of that, you know,
Yeah.
like they don't know who they are. I
They don't
always
know.
remember that. I was like, they don't know who they are. And
Yeah.
I know who I am. I remember that just being a kid, and I was like, I knew who I am, and I was already up. And so, like, you know, when I would meet like other classmates, their parents would say dirty ass shit like that to me. I just remember
Damn.
think, yeah, I just remember thinking, I was like, it wasn't until I got like older and older that I thought, okay, you all talk that shit behind my back, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't you wouldn't be winning games without me, right? You wouldn't be
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
winning
Yeah.
the race without me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, go ahead, you know, like talk all you want, but you know, I'm going to stand defiant on my
Yeah.
abilities. So go
I
ahead,
felt
talk
like
some
that.
shit.
I felt like that too. Like it's okay to be around like in school playing sports and stuff like that. I did theater too, and all that was cool, but it was very few times where I actually got invited to do something or go somewhere or be a part of anything. You know what I mean? On a personal level with the other kids in the community, right? And so
Yeah.
and that always played in my mind like, you know, I'm cool at school, you know, but that's about it. You know, it's cool, but that's about it. And I think what I admire is that you see, I was adopted, so my parents are white, right? And I was adopted, so they didn't understand like the stuff that I was going through. And don't get me wrong, my mom tried. She tried to teach me about the civil rights movement and all that stuff, right? And have me go to college classes and stuff. But at the same time, it's like I never felt like I fit in even at home. You get what I mean? I was always different no matter what the things I was going through. And what I admire is that you had that your grandfather to be like, look, don't listen to what they're talking about. Don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. You are you are Cody. You know what I mean? You are who you are. You know, and they don't understand that, and almost like that don't internalize the dysfunction that is them. It has nothing to do with you. You are functioning correctly in the way that you are. You are the common man, like you said, and that's okay. You know what I mean? And I think that played a huge role in your ability to kind of navigate life in a positive way that you were able to, right? To
Yeah,
try,
see,
like,
yeah, see, like in our friendship, man, like I said, going back to that was just like trying to empower you. I don't know why in the hell. Some people will say, well, why would you want to do that to your friend or whatever? Hell, we were kids. We
yeah,
didn't know. We didn't know what I just remember seeing shit out there in the world and then also asking you if you've been through racist
yeah,
stuff, you know?
yeah,
And I would see it in the school that we were at, how we were looked upon, how they would talk smack upon us. And I was trying to tell you, like, like, hey, let's dig in,
yeah,
let's put our heels in the mud and get ready,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and I was just like, I remember trying because I felt like you got my front, I got your back, you
yeah,
got my back, I got your front. That's
yeah,
how I felt like between us.
yeah,
And so that's why I was like trying to get a grasp on you. And I
yeah,
remember there were times where you would be like, nah, man, nah, I can't do that. I just don't want my mom to know about that, and I'd be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, man, hey, it's us, like, hey,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, because my mom was a man, she was a Brillo pad, man. I'm telling you, man, like that I disappeared from Fargo because I made plans to leave. That's how unhappy I was. And I don't know if I told you, but I hated my mom because all she did was control me and wanted me, and that's why she put that fear in me all the time. And she would take, you know what I mean? So then whenever God, it's almost like whenever I would really stand up for who I was, or like what you're talking about, dig your heels in, then she would just destroy me and take everything that I love dear away from me. You get what I'm saying? So then even yeah, like, and eventually that's exactly what happened is she shipped me out and sent me to Wisconsin to this boarding school on a farm. Like I was a criminal kid and I wasn't even a bad kid, you know what I mean? But I eventually went to this school where I'm talking about, these were kids from the inner city that were gang banging and had guns and selling dope and all that stuff. And I came from Fargo, North Dakota, and then that's why I didn't really know how to really stand up to my mom like I needed to, you know what I mean? To be able to see the world like you were trying to show me, like, look, it's not what you think it is. Cause I was so absorbed in like, oh shit, what's gonna happen when I get home?
no, I got you, man. And I remember you expressing that, and I just remember thinking, I was like, man, all right, I'd be like, all right,
That's that
you
Christian,
know,
that
yeah,
super
I'd
Christian.
be like, all right, I got, like, I'll see him tomorrow, like I used to think that. I'd be like, man, we'll do better things tomorrow. I always remember thinking that about you. I was like, we'll just do better things tomorrow.
That's cool.
And and like I don't think I've shared that with you too, but it's just it wasn't my time or place, obviously, but you were my friend, and the times that we would see each other, like we go to that native church on Sundays,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and we'd see each other and we just hang out. And I remember a few times your mom would come up to me and she'd be like, "What did you talk to Peter about?" I'd be like,
yeah,
"Whoa, what?" I'd be
yeah,
like, "Hey," she goes, "Tell me, what was it?" And I was just like,
yeah,
uh, and I remember thinking, I was like, okay, I'm just, I was cool with lying, right? Because I was just like,
yeah,
ah, man, we just talk about school, what we got to get ready for the week. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, we were talking about, just us being teenage boys, it's like this or
yeah,
that, or, oh, did
yeah.
you check, hey, did you see so and so at school? She's looking fine, like stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
because I didn't know if that would get you in trouble or not. Because I'd be like, all
yeah,
right.
yeah,
I mean, we were just trying to be two cats, two cool cats,
yeah,
just being boys and stuff. But and that's why, like for me, I look at it differently because I am who I am and I've had this conversation with my kids because I'm like, I'm real.
Yeah.
And like lying, right? I learned how to lie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Meaning, when I was taking abuse from my stepdad, I had to lie to my mom and say I'm okay.
Yeah.
Why you crying? Why did
Oh,
it look like you were crying? I'm just okay. I just bumped my knee or something. I
yeah.
would make up something because I remember my stepdad used to say, if you tell your mom what I did to you, I'll do the same to her.
Yeah. Wow.
And and I'd be like, what? Like that would fuck with you, right? I mean, I was mentally getting fucked with shit like that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I had to endure strength. I had to endure I lost innocence as a kid. I had to
Yeah.
like I had to learn these adult things and I was just like, damn, man. You
Yeah.
know, like I used to envy kids who just grew up just with innocence.
Yeah.
But, and then it was like, well, damn, Cody, why are you so brash and harsh? I guess I
Yeah.
just got thrown in the fire a little bit more sooner than most. And that's how it formed me. That's how I felt. I'd just be like,
Forged by the
yeah,
fire.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was like that, I would too. I'd come across brash and harsh.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah. Remember?
it's,
Remember
yeah,
Miss Garvey even saying, remember Miss Garvey? Or was it Miss Garvey? Or yeah, wasn't it? The junior high teacher, because we went to that one classroom, but then the junior high was right there, and Miss Garvey was their teacher, even though we were
yeah.
in like grade, and she would always come like, "What is going on with you?"
She would too. Like she cared. I get it, man. She cared,
Yeah,
but she
yeah,
just didn't know what it was like to be black or native to
yeah,
understand the colorization of that, of our difference at that school. Or like
yeah,
I remember sometimes like I would be harsh. I was probably more than
yeah.
you. I remember
Oh
one
yeah,
time
you.
I told Miss Garby, I was like, man, you white people, man, you just, and I was going off, man. I was just like, man, you just want to keep the man down. You just want to keep my people down and all this shit. Like
Yeah,
I was fired up. I was throwing the fist up before anybody knew what the hell all this fist throwing shit in the world now. I was throwing
yeah,
that bitch up. I was like, and then I
yeah,
remember she got on me and she just was like, she goes, you don't, how dare you come to me in my space and talk to me
yeah.
like that?
I
And I was like,
remember.
you need to hear this, man. I was adamant too. I was like, man, you
Yeah,
need to hear this. And it was just like this feud. And I don't know
yeah,
how it took off, man. But I was like,
yeah,
and of course, it was okay. Like, we talked it out and stuff, but it was just like, because I remember she asked me one pivotal thing and she was like, is that really how you perceive white people? And I was like, yeah, when you all come at me like that,
yeah, yeah.
how else am I supposed to feel and
How
react?
else? We feel alienated as it is, So when
Like,
it's like they're validating the difference, that's when the problem comes in, right? They validate the very thing that they say they don't do, and then you're like, okay.
right?
They said it was
Or
gonna
like,
happen.
or like when they, like it took a lot for me to have people just it didn't matter if it was white, black, native, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, man, to
Yeah,
just have somebody say I care about you. I'd
yeah,
just be like, I'd like you're gonna get hit over the head, that like, ooh, wait,
yeah,
what, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you were
yeah.
like,
It's real.
for real,
Yeah,
yeah, like for real, like you,
yeah,
um, because it did, man. It took a lot. It took a lot for me to, uh, I guess, to see that and feel that. So that's why, yeah, it's crazy how, like, our younger years, whether it shaped, it really did. It shaped us, or shaped me to really see things different in this world, man, for real. Like
yeah,
I was like, damn, man, that's what it's like out there. And that, for me, I was trying to like get you plugged in.
yeah,
I remember I was just like, hey, let's, and you'd be like, nah, man, I got to concentrate on this. Like, man, I remember you telling me, hey, man, you better do your homework. And I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And I'd be like, hey, I'd be like, hey, what you got? What? I'd be like looking at your paper. I'd be like, hey, what you got? Okay, I'll just put that down right there, because I was so like, I was just like, man, I was just too
Yeah,
at times focused into that,
yeah.
like that. What's out there? What, Yeah, it was just, but it was cool. I liked our dynamic as friendship.